Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, the relatives of the victims of April's ferry sinking reject a deal reached by rival parties to get to the bottom of the disaster, blocking the passage of a special bill for the probe yet again. Islamic State militants released a gruesome video purportedly showing the beheading of a US photojournalist who went missing in Syria in 2012. Plus, South Korea aims to win more than 90 gold medals in the 2014 Asian Games, which the country's Incheon city hosts next month. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's noon Wednesday, August 20th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Ju.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this lunchtime, the passage of a bill aimed at uncovering the truth about the Sewol-ho ferry sinking has been delayed yet again after family members of the victims said they could not accept a bipartisan agreement reached on Tuesday by Korea's ruling and main opposition parties.
Now, with the July provisional session of the Assembly having ended on Tuesday, the main opposition party has unilaterally requested another extraordinary session, which will start on Friday to give lawmakers time to pass the special bill. Kwon Soa reports.
The deal struck on Tuesday by the country's two main parties on the Sewol-ho ferry bill will likely need to be tweaked. Saenuri Party floor leader Lee Wan-koo and his main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy counterpart Park Kyung-son announced their agreement on the last day of the National Assembly's month-long extraordinary session with relieved smiles as the bill took weeks of wrangling. But the opposition party ended up having to hold another 5-hour-long meeting after the bereaved families rejected the bill. The families were still dissatisfied with the makeup of the committee members charged with handling the investigation.
4 spots on the panel will be allocated to lawmakers. 2 will be reserved for main opposition party and 2 for the ruling party. We'll appoint our share of the 2, only after seeking approval from the opposition and families of the ferry victims.
We're disappointed that the rival parties made agreements in this way, which is saddening the bereaved families once again.
The majority of the opposition parties say the families' rejection means the bill cannot be passed, but a few members say there is no more time for delay. The ruling party's floor leader said further renegotiations are not possible at this moment, as the governing party had already conceded to giving special prosecutorial powers as demanded by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. An extraordinary parliamentary session on the issue will be held Friday. Kwon Soa, Arirang News.
And now to a gruesome video released by radical Islamist militants on Tuesday. In a horrific 5-minute clip, militants from Islamic State are purportedly shown beheading American journalist James Foley, who went missing in Syria nearly 2 years ago. Now, before being killed, the journalist, apparently coerced by his captors, blames the U.S. government for his impending death. Connie Lee has the latest.
In a video released Tuesday by the Islamic State militants, it purportedly shows U.S. independent journalist James Foley being beheaded. The 39-year-old is seen wearing orange and on his knees, next to a gunman dressed in all black. The video, titled A Message to America, first starts off with a speech by President Barack Obama announcing that the U.S. military will begin targeted airstrikes in Iraq against the Islamic State, otherwise known as ISIS. The ordered airstrikes in the country was to help the Iraqi security force take on the militants who were gaining ground and killing thousands. The video then shows Foley reciting a statement, presumably forced by his captors, that his real killer is America. Soon after, Foley is killed. The video continues, showing another U.S. journalist named Steven Sotloff, with the gunmen threatening to kill him too, saying that the life of this American citizen depends on the actions of President Obama. The authenticity of the video is currently being verified. A spokesperson for the White House National Security Council released a statement saying that the U.S. intelligence community is working as quickly as possible to determine the authenticity of the video. If genuine, we are appalled by the brutal murder of an innocent American journalist, and we express our deepest condolences to his family and friends. Foley has been reporting in the Middle East for the past 5 years until he disappeared while in northwest Syria back in November 2012. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And in other news, as Japan beefs up its military prowess, it's also shoring up support at home by opening up live fire drills to thousands of spectators. And despite Seoul's continuous warnings that anything related to the security on the Korean peninsula should have its approval first, it seems Japan has other plans for a security-related treaty it has with the U.S. Kwon Soa reports.
80 battle tanks, 60 military aircraft, and 2,300 troops pound the foothills of Mount Fuji amid thousands of spectators. This is part of annual live fire exercises for Japan's self-defense forces on Monday, a public display of the tactics and equipment that are used to defend Japanese territory.
They are great. These are the elite troops who will protect Japan, and I'm very glad they are on our side, not our enemies.
With all the fuss over China, Japan should have the equipment it needs, and I think it is the first step to building up deterrence.
While the crowd at home applauds Japan's expanding military role, it's a source of concern for neighboring countries like South Korea, a victim of Japan's militaristic past. Fearing the buildup, Seoul has repeatedly stressed that Japan must get its explicit consent on matters related to South Korea's security and interests. According to the Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun Wednesday, the Japanese government plans to revise its defense treaty with the United States so it can provide weapons and ammunition to U.S. forces and air-to-air refueling for U.S. aircraft in the event of a security crisis on the Korean peninsula. The report said these will be a part of the Japanese government's expanded assistance for Washington, and added the two sides are in their final stages of talks. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
A senior official from Korea's foreign ministry says settling the wartime sex slavery issue is the key to cooling tensions between Korea and Japan. The Korean and Japanese foreign ministers agreed when they met in Myanmar earlier this month that there must be progress in their nation's high-level talks aimed at solving this highly emotive issue. The official went on to say that Tokyo is coming under pressure from the UN, the US, and the European Union to atone for its historical wrongdoing. However, as for the rounds of talks that have been held between officials of Korea and Japan over the past couple of months, the senior diplomat made it clear that it's too early to talk about any progress made.
Now, with the 2014 Asian Games kicking off in the South Korean port city of Incheon in less than 1 month's time, a delegation from North Korea's Olympic Committee arrived in South Korea late Tuesday for some pre-Games functions. The group is made up of 8 North Korean officials, including Yang Song-ho, who is the president of the Korean University of Physical Education in Pyongyang. Arriving on a flight from Beijing, the officials were greeted by lots of reporters, and they were smiling, but they refused to do any interviews. During his stay, Yang, the head of the delegation, will give a keynote speech and a presentation at a pre-Games event on this Wednesday. The delegation will also tour the main stadium and the athletes' village before leaving South Korea on Friday. Around 150 North Korean athletes will take part in the Incheon Asian Games, which run through September 19th. Through October 4th. So, as you just heard there, in 30 days, nearly 10,000 athletes from dozens of Asian countries will descend upon the South Korean port city of Incheon to take part in the 17th Asian Games. Our Song Ji-sun gives us a look at the figures for this year's event and the expectations for Team Korea.
It's the third time Korea is playing host to Asia's biggest sporting event, and the home field advantage has Korean athletes feeling confident. The team's goal is to earn at least 90 gold medals and place second overall after China. The Korean baseball team, which has won the Asian Games a total of 3 times, including 4 years ago in Kwon Soa, is considered a favorite.
Gold, gold, gold is the only word on our minds. But we're keeping a close eye on Japan, Taiwan, and China, as they have improved over the past few years as well.
A total of 439 golds in 36 sports will be up for grabs at this international event, during which nearly 10,000 athletes from 45 different countries will compete. 150 of the participants will come from North Korea. A delegation from the North Olympic Committee is currently in the South to participate in the group draws on Thursday for 10 different sports, including basketball, volleyball, and football. North Korea has placed first in women's football twice before and are the favorites to win in Incheon. Team North Korea's goal overall is finishing in the top 10, something they've accomplished when the games were held in the South Korean port city of Busan 12 years ago. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Time now for a look through some of the other international headlines we're following on this Wednesday afternoon. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news centre.
Eunice, Liberia has been one of the West African countries hardest hit, if not the worst hit, by the Ebola outbreak. And now the government there is instituting new measures to contain the deadly virus.
That's right, Chinju. The Liberian president has declared a nighttime curfew in place as we speak to minimize movement, as all movement would be blocked in and out of the West Point slum where that quarantine center was attacked this past weekend. Here's Connie Kim with the story.
In a bid to stem the Ebola outbreak in Liberia, the nation's president has declared a nighttime curfew and ordered security forces to quarantine a slum that's home to at least 50,000 people. The new quarantine areas include Monrovia's West Point slum and all entertainment centers. The new measures come as there was a glimmer of hope in the fight against the outbreak, as infected healthcare workers in Liberia are reported to be showing remarkable signs of improvement after taking the experimental drug ZMapp. The 3 are the first Africans to receive the treatment. ZMapp was first given to 2 U.S. aid workers and a priest earlier this month. Meanwhile, Liberia has confirmed that all 17 suspected Ebola patients who fled their quarantine center when it was looted last weekend have been accounted for. Their sudden disappearance sparked fears a deadly virus could spread into the densely populated slum around it. People have turned themselves in and have been transferred to another clinic. It's not yet known whether any of them actually have Ebola. Latest figures from the WHO show Liberia registered the most new Ebola deaths over a 3-day period in the latter half of last week, with 53. The overall death toll observed in Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria has now topped the 1,200 mark. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Heavy fighting has resumed on the Gaza Strip after a 24-hour ceasefire extension collapsed with new attacks, hours before the truce was to expire. The Israeli military said it responded to fresh rocket fire from Gaza with airstrikes. It said 3 rockets landed in open fields near Beersheba, followed by 2 others in Netivot. Israeli negotiators pulled out of peace talks in Egypt. A spokesman to the Israeli Prime Minister, Mark Regev, called the rocket attack a grave and direct violation of the ceasefire. Hamas has denied sending rockets into Israel. Now, Palestinian medics say the renewed Israeli airstrikes killed a 2-year-old child and 2 others, while prompting thousands of Gazans to flee to UN shelters. 31 people were arrested in yet another night of demonstrations in Ferguson that ended in chaos. Captain Ron Johnson of the Missouri State Highway Patrol said a tiny minority of lawbreakers hailing from as far away as New York and California had instigated mayhem, setting 2 fires, throwing Molotov cocktails, and firing at police. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder is set to arrive in Ferguson Wednesday to lead the federal government's probe on the shooting. And in a separate development, another young African-American man was shot and killed by St. Louis police not far from Ferguson after reportedly brandishing a knife at officers. And finally, former Microsoft chief Steve Ballmer has stepped down from the company's board after successfully acquiring the NBA's Los Angeles Clippers for a record $2 billion. In a letter addressed to his successor, Satya Nadella, made public by Microsoft, Ballmer said he anticipated a hectic fall season, leading the Clippers, teaching and conducting his civic duties. The 58-year-old Microsoft veteran had been at the company for more than 3 decades, 14 years of that as chief executive. Ballmer became the new owner of the LA Clippers last week after a California court upheld Shelley Sterling's right to sell the team. Her husband, longtime owner Donald Sterling, had come under heavy pressure to exit the NBA after an audio clip of him making racist remarks was released.
I'm not using that word anymore.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about
For months now, the government has been sounding the alarm about the sluggish domestic economy. They've ushered in a new economic team and introduced stimulus measures to provide a spark. And a new survey now suggests the economic community, by and large, approves. Hwang Jie has the details.
The new economic team led by Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has received a passing grade for boosting the domestic economy, at least according to the 37 economic experts recently surveyed by the Federation of Korean Industries. More than half of the respondents said the set of government stimulus measures proposed are sufficient for propping up the ailing economy. Just around 15% of them thought they were not. The experts surveyed also said that government measures should focus on boosting domestic demand by removing excessive regulations and running an expansionary fiscal and financial policy. While around half of the experts expressed concerns about the Korean economy falling into a low-growth trap that resembles that of Japan, the other half were more optimistic, saying the domestic economy is on a recovery track, but that the momentum has slowed because of the ferry disaster in April. They cited the sluggish real estate market, mounting household debt, and worsening consumer and business sentiment due to the ferry tragedy as the biggest challenges currently facing the economy. As for the long-term problems, the experts pointed to the absence of new growth engines, slumping private consumption and investment, the low birth rate, and Korea's aging population. The majority of the experts expect that domestic demand will return to the level seen just before the April ferry disaster if the government measures are implemented as planned. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
With the grip on the smartphone market loosening, Samsung Electronics is branching out. The tech giant has acquired stakes in 10 firms since the start of last year at home and abroad to expand its business portfolio, and 2 in the last week. The latest was announced Tuesday. Samsung says it bought a 100% stake in QuietSide, a U.S.-based retailer for air conditioners, but declined to give details, including the price. Last week, the firm purchased SmartThings, a U.S.-based platform developer that develops apps that monitor, control, and automate devices at home. Both acquisitions are part of the Korean tech giant's attempts to make inroads into the North American smart home market. It's also about diversifying, as Samsung's dominance in the smartphone industry has waned in the face of growing competition, which poses a drag on the company's long-term profitability. And Korea is fast becoming the #1 tourist destination for Chinese visitors, and it is this boom that's expected to drive a huge increase in Chinese tourist spending over the next 5 years or so. The Korea Tourism Organization and Hana Dae Securities estimate Chinese tourists will spend over $30 billion in Korea in 2020 for a nearly 5-fold increase compared to last year. They also say the number of Chinese tourists will increase by nearly 20% every year through 2020 to reach 15 million in the year 2020. Chinese money spent in duty-free shops, which takes up one of the largest portion in their spending, is expected to jump 9-fold during the 2013 to 2020 period to $9 billion.
Now, global ratings agency Fitch has retained its AA- credit rating for South Korea, maintaining its outlook at stable as well. The finance ministry said on Tuesday that Fitch had cited moderate government debt and sustained budget surpluses as the reasons behind its decision. The agency evaluated Korea's growth as still being resilient, although the domestic economy has been dented rather severely by April's ferry disaster. Rising household debt and the North Korean risk factor, however, were cited as weak spots that could damper the country's sovereign credit profile. And the South Korean capital, Seoul, has been listed as the 16th most influential city in the entire world. US economics magazine Forbes also pegged Seoul as one of the rising stars, hinting that it could soon make it into the top 10, at least sometime in the near future. Forbes took into account various factors such as foreign investment, concentration of corporate businesses, and the ease of air travel. London was deemed the world's most influential city this year. New York City came in a close second, followed by Paris and Singapore. Shifting gears now to the local arts and culture scene, which is thriving here in Korea. The 20th century was a very influential time for art, as everyone knows, and our Im Yoon-hee takes us to one exhibition in Seoul where you can enjoy a wide array of artworks that shed light on this period.
The 20th century gave birth to modern art, a movement that contains some of the biggest and most influential movements in the history of art. From the beautiful and delicate paintings of Pierre-Auguste Renoir to the edgy and somewhat frightening works of Damien Hirst. A walk through pieces from the 20th century reveals the twists and turns that have led to today's world of art.
Renoir to Damien Hirst is a blockbuster exhibition that features 104 different original works from 53 leading artists of the 20th century.
Early art of the 20th century came on the tail end of the Impressionist, Realist, and Neoclassical movements. Works that sometimes capture soft edges, but also the reality of life. The Post-Impressionist movement then appeared, along with a string of other movements, revealing artists submerged in a need for something different. Fast forward in time, and the art world is now enveloped in sharp colors and eye-catching images. And it's not just with paintings. Artist Magritte questions reality, and Dali questions perception with his unique sculptures. But it doesn't stop there. Pop art entered the playing field and became a game changer. Sharp contrasting images, lines, and edges became more frequent. Bright colors and odd combinations lined the walls of art. And these pioneering artists opened the doors to new ideas, expanding the boundaries, making it possible for many others to follow suit.
Damien Hirst is an artist who truly represents contemporary art. He was the first to use his spin art paintings, which led to the development of other new ideas and contemporary artworks.
Regardless of the movement and styles, the 20th century contained a range of different artists with different visions. And with just one stroll through a gallery, you can walk through 100 years of history. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We've had rain for 4 straight days now. We got a short break from the rain this morning, but the rain will begin to fall again from this afternoon, starting from the southern coast areas, then spread to the southern areas, and then will go to upper provinces later at night. And some areas will see heavy showers up to 200 millimeters as the addition of rain is expected till tomorrow in the central area, including here in Seoul. So we gotta be prepared for that. And today is going to be another murky and rainy one. The cloud cover will continue throughout the day and temperatures should be a bit higher than yesterday. So let's take a closer look at those numbers. The afternoon high in Seoul and Daegu will rise to 27, while Gwangju, that is, and Daegu and Busan will hike up to 26 later in the day. And for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island will get up to 26, Daejeon will top out at 27, and Dokdo should see highs of 24 in the afternoon. Well, that's all I have for you today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and let's send it back to Mark and Jinju in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather report there, and that brings us to the end of our newscast.
Mark and I'll be back at noon tomorrow. Thank you for watching.